Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry that we are somehow late with 5 minutes, but I'm requesting that we start in the next 3 minutes. So just bear with us for the next 3 minutes, then we start over. For those who will need translation, the IT team will give you the translation items back there. So probably you can just pick them from there and we continue from there. Thank you. So I want to officially welcome us for this wonderful session that we are going to have. Hopefully for our friends who don't speak, neither get English, you have gotten the gadgets. So I hope that's okay. I want to officially welcome us, like I've said, for this wonderful session that will look onto a very great topic that looks onto the shaping Africa's voice on SDR, or the special drawing rights, through the global financial architecture. And we are going to look onto issues relating to allocation and utilization. But still, as you might be aware, there are a lot of discussion regarding the SDR, and out of the total amount that was allocated globally, the percentage that Africa as a whole received wasn't that significant as per se, but I'm very happy that our discussion today will give us a good opportunity to scrutinize some of the issues that came out on country basis, countries including Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, Senegal, and all others that received their SDR, how they used it, and to what extent this was very significant in helping Africa at a time when it was in debt crisis and during the COVID time. We are talking about a continent that has been grappling with higher debt crisis. Out of $10 we collect, you know very well that at least $6 to $7 goes to debt repayment. That's equivalent to 60 to 70%. And it's very alarming when it comes to that situation. And we want to see the connection between the allocation of SDR to the loop-sided global financial architecture that we have been talking about. What are the best solutions that Africa need to look onto? And at the same time, we have talked about the rechanneling of SDR through Africa Development Bank. A lot of questions are still there in terms of how this needs to be done, the structures, and the elements that will allow transparency and accountability. So as I am speaking, I want to welcome our great and wonderful panelists to come on board. But first, let me welcome our moderator, that's Joab Okanda, who will introduce the panelists, and then from there, I will pick it from there as we continue with the discussion. But in the meantime, just to let you know that Afrodad has organized this session with its partner organizations. I will give you the names as we give the appreciation statement at the end point. So let me, you'll help me to welcome Job with a clap of hands. Karibu Job, as he's going to welcome the panelists.
Thank you so much, Shem, for that wonderful introduction. Because we're behind time and this topic is of a great interest, allow me not to go into the panelists' bios, but I'd like to call Lee from the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Dr. Ndongo from LAREM, clap for them as they come, Christine from the Uganda Debt Network, Leo, I saw you're sitting somewhere, Leo, from ANIJ, and Dr. Bebe. Welcome. Friends, as Shem has already introduced the topic, this topic is of great importance. And as we discuss this topic, I want us to locate this topic within the context of the theme of Africa Development Bank's annual meetings, which says Africa's transformation, the African Development Bank Group, and the reform of the global financial architecture. And I think Shem outlined some of the inequalities that exist within the global financial architecture, how global economic decision-making processes are made, and how that disadvantages Africa. It is by design that out of the $650 billion worth of SDRs, $1 billion worth of SDRs that the IMF released in 2021 to respond to COVID-19, that Africa as a continent got only $33 billion, representing 5% of the entire SDR's allocation that happened. And you see a country like the US alone, which actually did not need these resources. I think it received about $117 billion. And then they said we'll rechannel that. We'll rechannel about 100 billion as rich countries to support you, but that rechanneling has not happened. And as we look at this conversation within the governance of global economic decision making, I think when I was reflecting, two quotes from two prominent Africans came to my mind. And one was from Sekou Toure, which says, to take part in the African Revolution, it is not enough to write a revolutionary song. You must fashion the revolution with the people. And so it's not enough to just talk about reform of the global financial architecture without carrying people along. This conversation should not end in this particular room. We should carry this conversation to our communities and to the public for them to see why we need to reform these institutions, which to date still reflect the world of 1944 when they were created, when none of us was present at the table. The other quote that came, and forgive me for this, it was from James Baldwin, which says, the power of the white world is threatened whenever a black man refuses to accept the white world's definitions. So as we refuse today to accept the current international financial architecture, what precautions should we take as we do that? Allow me to sit down as we start off this conversation. We'll have the panelists take some questions at the beginning, and then we'll allow time for interactions. I want this session to be as interactive as possible. You're welcome. Thank you, welcome. And because I didn't do justice in introducing you, as you respond to the questions that we have, I would like you to just say a little bit in 30 seconds about yourself and the organization you represent and what you've been doing around this topic. So I'll start with Leo. And Leo, I know you from Nigeria and you've been involved in the SDR's conversations at the national level. And so Leo, we know that when SDRs were released, African countries were also battling debt, high debt indebtedness. How did this impact on Nigeria's utilization of the allocation that it got?
Okay, my name is Leo Ataku. I'm the Acting Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEJ. We are based in Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. We also have our advocacy office in Abuja, where Paul, my colleague here and there, works. We also work on issues of debt, structural adjustments. We also work on environmental issues, particularly climate change, engaging the multinational oil companies operating in the Niger Delta. We also work on issues of governance, because Africa is currently plagued by issue of bad governance, across the region. So straight to your question, in 2021, when the board of IMF approved the allocation of the special drawing rights to countries, Nigeria received $3.35 billion worth of SDRs. And we tried to commission our research to really find out how the SDRs were utilized in Nigeria and in Ghana. Our partners in Ghana, ASEP, they anchored the research in Ghana. And the findings were quite interesting. For Nigeria, the researcher had difficulty to get data, to access data regarding the utilization of SDRs. But at some point, we can confidently say that the SDRs were only used to show up the reserve at the Central Bank of Nigeria. So if you hear that the external reserve of Nigeria today is 34 billion USD, know that $3.35 billion of that figure is the SDR. So it's still sitting in there at the Central Bank of Nigeria. So that is how it is utilized. It is used to shore up the external reserve of Nigeria. So in terms of connecting it with how that impacted debt management in Nigeria, the Debt Management Office does not have any information regarding the utilization of special drawing rights in Nigeria. And in 2021, Nigeria's public debt stood at 95.7 billion US dollars. And from 2021 up until 2023, December 31st, the external debt, the public debt of Nigeria, stood at 108 billion US dollar. So you can imagine the percentage increase. So it does show that Nigeria continued borrowing during the period, and it really did not have a recorded positive impact. The receipt of SDR did not in any way have a positive impact in terms of management of the country's public debt. That said, I think in the reckoning of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the whole idea of keeping the money in the external reserve is for it to be able to support imports, for it to continue to give a positive picture to foreign direct investors that will want to come and invest in the country. So this is how the SDR was utilized in Nigeria. But that is unlike a country like Ghana, where the SDR was put in the Obantan PA project or program, which is a new Ghana relief program. It's a basket of a program that is targeted towards the social sector, where funds were, utilized for the social sector, particularly for health, education, and so on and so forth. But the situation with Ghana is that it was not clear as to what exactly of the percentage of SDR, 1 billion US dollar worth of SDR that Ghana received. It was not clear in terms of disaggregated data how the SDR was utilized. But what was clear was that as at 2021, about over $300 million worth was put in that Ghana program, where other donors, other sources of revenue also go in there. So it was a bit difficult to also disaggregate. But it was clear that the funds, the SDRs, went into that program. That also helps the social sector, water and sanitation, infrastructure, as well as social protection. So that's how.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leo. You've highlighted critical issues, including the issues of transparency, where it's not clear how the SDRs were utilized, other than knowing it was used to show up reserves, but also to support the importers. Friends, this session we're looking at the challenges, but also we would like to provide solutions. And Christine, I'll come to you. What Leo has just highlighted, most of the SDRs were used to boost reserves, to support imports, but not really invested in the productive sectors. And there are also challenges, because when the reserves, when the resources leave the IMF, they come to the central bank, and there are issues between the central bank and the ministries of finance, for example, whenever governments wanted to use this for budgetary support. In terms of providing recommendations, what would you say are some of the legislations required to ensure that SDRs support countries, they deliver the intended support to countries, whether it is in terms of a crisis or in terms of long-term planning?
Thank you very much, Joab. My name is Christine Birinchiro, and I work with the Uganda Debt Network as program manager for policy analysis and governance program. So Uganda Debt Network is a civil society organization. We advocate for better policies on debt specifically, but many other areas of governance. And we mainly deliver our mandate in two key programs. That is the policy analysis and governance program that mainly engages the national level stakeholders or policymakers. And under this, we look at budget advocacy. We do a lot of budget advocacy. We do a lot of advocacy on policies, and then anti-corruption. Those are the three components. But the second program is community empowerment and engagement. This is where we empower the communities on the government programs and the economic situation so that they are able then to engage both at their levels but also at the national level. So we create that linkage of the local and national level issues to be able to support our government to deliver better services, and also the citizens to be able to demand for their rights. And so, Joa, back to your question, I think majorly we see most of our governments as African countries have legislated outwardly, and this is specific in terms of SDRs. We have outward legislation, but we do not have inward-looking legislation as countries specific to SDRs. For example, we have legislation as members of IMF, of course. We enact legislation to enable our participation in the SDR system. But when we get back home, we do not see any legislation, at least for most of our countries, that looks at guiding the utilization and management of the SDRs for the different countries. And so I would recommend that we establish mechanisms as African governments and frameworks on how to control or manage the SDRs at country level. And when we develop such clear frameworks akin to debt management frameworks, I'm sure most of us have debt management frameworks, you know the stakeholders who will play what roles, you know the accountability, utilization processes, and you know, you're able to do M&A and you know, finally know and trace what these SDR funds have done. And we do not necessarily need to come up with fresh legislation. We can review and amend some of the existing legislation. We, for example, in Uganda have the Public Finance Management Act. And when you scan through that act, you cannot see the word SDRs or special drawing rights anywhere. And so we are glad that beginning of this year, the ministry came up and they are doing consultations with a view to revising the law and, you know, reviewing it. And so that is an opportunity for us as citizens, as civil society, to be able to engage and see that issues of SDR funds then make it into the public management frameworks of our countries. And so this will enable us to know if we get SDR funds, because during our research as well in Uganda, it was hard for our